Back with me are Jesse Moore and Brendan Buck. So, guys, Jesse, I'll start with you here. Democrats in Congress have repeatedly pointed to the courts as being the critical check for Trump's abuse of power. But is there confidence the administration will fully comply with any rulings? And if not, what happens then?
I'd be shocked to find anyone who's confident that they'll comply. That's one of the most terrifying parts of what's happening right now, is those little moments when you hear the president or his supporters or his staff say the quiet part out loud. And we've heard a number of times, including from the president himself, we might have to take a look at some of these judges. That sounds scary, and it also sounds not so subtle. It's an ominous warning for the democracy, because we rely on norms, we rely on systems that are reliant on people respecting the rule of law, respecting courts. Judges and courts don't have militaries to enforce their law. They rely on the American people, on our democracy to function with respect, with honor, and with a long view of things. And that's not how this president operates.
So, Brendan, Republicans in Congress, they are right now focused on the budget. With the House and the Senate, they are still at odds. Each chamber says they won't accept the other's version. Look, the House framework barely passed, in part thanks to pressure from President Trump. Can he strong-arm enough lawmakers to get it through in the end? And which plan do you think will prevail?
Well, I think it's going to be a compromise. And yeah, the question is, who is he strong-arming here? The House plan would include doing tax reform and immigration and the whole agenda. But it has really, really steep spending cuts, particularly as it relates to Medicaid. And President Trump has said he doesn't want to touch Medicaid other than potentially waste, fraud, and abuse. The problem is the House plan imagines far more steep cuts into Medicaid than just waste, fraud, and abuse. And I don't think the Senate is ever going to accept something like that. And so there is a bit of a standoff here. I think both sides are right. At this point, the House would never be able to accept what the Senate has done, and the Senate would never be able to accept what the House has done. At some point, of course, that has to change. I think the problem is that nobody really feels any pressure at this point. We are months and months and months away from the tax law expiring. So they're probably just going to argue with each other for a while. They're going to try to get through this government funding deadline that's coming up in a short amount of time and pick this back up. I still think that there's a very good chance that, while the one bill approach where everything is all in one bill is the favorite right now, I could see that falling apart and having to separate it, where they move to that immigration bill first and keep arguing about taxes and spending for the rest of this year.
You think it's just going to be a bunch of CRs in a row?
Well, they haven't made a whole lot of progress to get even a top line number, let alone the details of a spending bill. Mike Johnson doesn't want to have to fund the government in any meaningful way right now, because those are some of the toughest votes you ever have to take. And he'd much rather do just a simple stopgap and say, we're going to worry about this later. But the challenge is he's never been able to pass those on his own, and he always has to rely on Democrats to get that done. And even in that situation, I don't think he wants to have to turn to Democrats and have his members griping that, once again, the minority is bailing out the majority party.
So, Jesse, while House Republicans are pulling back on town halls after the backlash they've gotten, especially over Elon Musk and Doge, one aide said lawmakers are being urged to avoid them altogether. Will avoiding their constituents just make it worse? I mean, especially as the number of fired federal employees keeps going up.
Well, that's the right question. Will that work? I think the challenge is it is working most of the time these days to just avoid conversations you don't want to have. The question is, will enough Americans be focused on what's happening to show up to town halls, to show up to, members of Congress offices, to send letters, to write? I do this. I work in politics for a living, and it's hard for me to open my news feed day to day. And I think a lot of Americans feel completely overwhelmed by what's happening. So I'm actually heartened to see how these town halls were going, that people were showing up. Now, as for the response of just trying to shut it down and discontinue them, I think that's telling. I think if you remember the Affordable Care Act, there were some hot town halls that happened while that was being passed for Democrats and Republicans, but they happened. Those conversations happened. It's part of democracy to make sure you're engaging your citizens. And the minute you stop doing that, you're denying the tenets of democracy.
Let me get a quick answer from you, Brian. I want to show folks what you've written, that Republicans in Brendan, rather, did I say Brian? Sorry about that. Republicans in Congress have to get control of DOJ by taking their own jobs more seriously, saying if members continue to stand by as DOJ plunges deeper into the federal bureaucracy, Congress would be sending a clear message to future presidents and perhaps even the courts that the executive need not worry about congressional authority. What's it going to take for congressional Republicans to take control, Brendan?
Well, I think we got a chance to talk about this concept a bit last weekend before I published this. It is the job of Congress to authorize all of the programs, not just that they exist, but they're supposed to be going in every few years and writing into actual law what they should be doing. People talk about the power of the purse as spending money, but the power of the purse is also that authorizing, going in and directing very specifically what programs should do. And members of Congress just sort of stopped doing that. And it's given a lot of political space for Elon Musk to go in and just sort of take free reign because nobody has any ownership of the system.
Yeah. All right. Brendan Buck, Jesse Moore. Guys, thank you both so much.